It's still happy hour with John Gaskins. This round's on me.
Well, while we were enjoying ourselves at Missouri Valley Football Conference Media Day in Sioux Falls. Good turnout. We enjoyed it. There's so much material for you there, wherever you find your podcasts on Happy Hour and at SiouxFallsLive.com. Out in Vegas, Las Vegas at the Palms, it was Mountain West Conference Media Day, and it was the maiden voyage. It is the maiden voyage for the North Dakota State Bison. Let's see right away how they translate from the FCS to the FBS. And it appears, from what I've read, what I've listened to, the Bison weren't the bells of the ball. UNLV, the home team there, and the 10-win team with a high-profile coach in Dan Mullen, and some speculation that maybe they'll go somewhere else someday, like the Pac-12. That was more of the star, but certainly the Bison had a presence, a noticeable media presence. Part of it, Mike McFeely, long time, 30 years at the Forum of Fargo-Moorhead, for 6+ years advocated for the Bison to leave what was becoming the boring and mundane life of winning most games by blowout, a lot of national championships, moving up to this level, into that conference. And here they are, Mike. So you popped champagne when it happened in early February, and now kind of you got the first taste of this is real. So how would you depict that experience in Vegas for a couple days?
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly different than the Missouri Valley Football Conference, just in terms of the markets and the number of media people covering it and the location. Sioux Falls is a great city. Don't get me wrong. I could easily live in Sioux Falls. It's much like Fargo-Moorhead. Yeah. But it ain't Las Vegas. And so that was different. And as you said, it was interestingly enough that, UNLV is sort of the talk of the Mountain West, and UNLV with head coach Dan Mullen has the momentum, certainly of the national media and the local media in Vegas behind them, that they are going to be the runaway winner, or at least the solid winner of the Mountain West Football Conference. And they're going to be the college football playoff representative from the group of 6 this year. I've seen that from a number of national prognosticators. I would say New Mexico as well, certainly is up there in terms. One of the people there in the media, and actually more than one, was sort of going down the road of, boy, now that Boise State and San Diego State and these other schools are gone, what's it going to be like to have 2 teams that dominate the league every year? And I kind of just went, well, okay, I mean, whatever, that's fine. They don't know what they don't know. I don't know how North Dakota State is going to translate into the Mountain West. I've been on the record for 6 months now saying I think this first year is going to be more challenging than people think. But I think eventually they're going to be just fine in the Mountain West. My point being, getting back to what you said, is North Dakota State was not the center of attention. There was certainly a storyline. Everybody wanted to know about the Bison, and a lot of the players knew about the Bison's history, and the coaches certainly were saying all the right things. But the Bison were not the nexus of the universe like they were in FCS, which I'm sure head coach Tim Palsek doesn't mind that one bit. I'm sure that he's just fine just being a lowly FCS school from the middle of nowhere going to the Mountain West. So it was, very high-end media day at a high-end resort in a large 3 million population metropolitan area. 185 media people or something were there, according to the conference. So that was different, and then different that the Bison weren't everything to everybody.
Yeah. And according to Jeff Kolpak, your longtime cohort there at the Forum, there was noticeable cigarette smoke, which you don't go everywhere, or the smell of it, which you don't get everywhere at every media day across the country. But it was Vegas, and you got to go see a Rat Pack show. So, and I don't think you answered Tom Izzo's question from your appearance there last week on his show of who was your favorite Rat Packer?
Oh, got to be Dean Martin. Got to be Dean Martin. Yeah, we had time. I was actually busy. The stuff started at 7:00 in the morning at the hotel. Yeah. We didn't get out of there till after 5:00 both days. But the one free night we had, a couple of us went down to check out the Rat. A Rat. There's more than one. Yes. A Rat Pack tribute show.
Yeah, they're not going to roll out the corpses.
At a casino, a block or so off the strip. I guess it's considered part of the strip. Yeah. It was outstanding, by the way. And but Dean Martin has to be the Dean. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Dean, if I told my wife this and she agreed. I said I'm not a gambler, so Vegas is not my scene. It's just not my thing. If I had the choice now, having been to, that was my first time, having the choice now between going to Las Vegas or New York City on a vacation, I would choose New York City 100 times out of 99 to go there. It's just 1,000 times better for me than Las Vegas. But I told my wife if I was going to have to go to Las Vegas, I would much rather be transported back to like 1962 and go to that Vegas, or at least what I imagine that Vegas to be, which is, mob run, all mobbed up and just not the tourist attraction it is now. It was all a bunch of degenerate gamblers and cigarette smokers and bourbon drinkers. And that, not that I smoke or drink a lot of bourbon, but that would, or my mobbed up, but that would much more fit my personality and what I think of Vegas and I think of the Rat Pack would be that than the carnival show that it appears to be now.
Yes, I'm with you. And I'm with you on Dean Martin. He's the guy of the four I'd most want to have drinks with because he was, just seemed like the most fun of those guys. Loosest, nicest, drunkest, sure, but functionally.
It was all an act. That was all an act.
Oh, it was all an act. Okay, all right.
Yep, it was. It was
like Foster Brooks, right?
Yep,
yeah.
Yep.
I do want to talk about football and NDSU's place in the future of the Mountain West and where all SDSU, maybe even USD, could fit into this. I always feel like I have to include them.
Can we just let's get that out of the way, right? Let's get that out of the way right now.
Yeah.
About USD. This is me saying this, not you. The idea that's out there that the folks at USD have spread, because I think on your program and others, when they've been asked, if the phone call came, could you go? And they've said, "Oh, yeah, we're ready. We could make this work." No, they could not. No, so just knock it off, USD.
Not enough money.
You're not ready to go. Aside from all the things behind the scenes that you have to get done, which we'll get into later, could USD raise $20 million in a week or 2 weeks to make the move? Let's just start there as a baseline. Answer that question and then say, yeah, okay, maybe not. But they're allowed to say what they're going to say. And I'm just going to say I think it is beyond laughable that USD believes it could make a move up right now to FBS. But go on.
No, that's fine. I think they want to act and be competitive, and I think that's smart of them. They've been raising a lot more money the last couple of years, sold a few more tickets than they have in this era, but I agree with you in general, and they need a little bit more time for that. Now, as SDSU, what's your feeling on them? Just from their angle, their readiness, certainly competitively, it feels like if NDSU was ready, SDSU was right there with the Bison competitively, except for last year. There's a big separation there. But money is involved as well. And Denny Sanford just died, by the way, which I don't know if that matters a whole lot going forward. But your sense of SDSU's readiness for this, and also
I don't. The competitive side of it is one tiny piece of this whole thing. I don't know. And this is for people like you or Matt Zimmer or whomever to ask the people of South Dakota State. Like, I don't know what they've been doing behind the scenes. Everybody seems to assume that they're moving things forward. Yeah, they're getting ready, but are they? I mean, for years they've said we're happy right where we are, concurrently with NDSU saying in certain ways and behind the scenes, no, we want to get out of here, right? I mean, NDSU started work on this seriously 6 years ago, not 6 days ago, not last Thursday, 6 years ago. And there was talks even before that they wanted to do this. As we've learned some things here, that there was talks, back in 2014 after they'd won 3 national championships in a row, that some people were saying, we got to start looking ahead here. I don't know that any of that has happened at South Dakota State. Again, that's not for me to answer. I don't know. I don't particularly care all that much. But in the context of what we're talking about here, this didn't just drop out of the blue sky. And it dropped at NDSU, and Matt Larson said, oh, yeah, sure, we'll go. Sure, we'll make it work. as I've written and said now for 6 or 8 months, whatever it's been, NDSU worked on this specifically for 6 years. They hired a consultant. They had a feasibility study done in 2021. They had a second feasibility study done in 2024. And for those 6 years plus, they were meeting benchmarks. They were preparing. They were getting their donors lined up. They were upping their budgets. They were doing the things that needed to be done. And they were open about this. This wasn't like a secret. They had to say it in code. But Matt Larson, if you look back at it, every time I'd ask him about it, and it was pretty much every time I'd see him, he would say, we're doing the things that we need to do so that in case an invitation does come, we can then seriously consider it. He couldn't say, yeah, we're going to get there and we're going to go, because you just can't do it that way unless you're the Sacramento State president, which is a whole different topic of discussion. But my point is that I don't know if South Dakota State has done any of this. From what I have heard, they have not. And Justin Sell, if you're watching this or if you pick this up on social media, if there's a different answer, somebody, either you have my phone number or somebody that you know has my phone number, so please call and correct me. But everything I've heard is that for the last 6 years, and especially since about 2024 when the Mountain West fell apart, that there's been one school that has been super aggressive and had a huge amount of want to get to FBS and to get to the Mountain West. And that one school with aggressiveness and want to got the invitation to the Mountain West, and it was NDSU. I've not heard the same thing about South Dakota State. Recently, in Vegas, from, well, let's call it multiple people, I'm hearing more that Montana State maybe are now, they're not going anyplace. The Mountain West doesn't want them right now, but I've heard Montana State are being maybe more aggressive and more like, okay, what do we need to do at least to get this done if sometime a phone call comes from the Mountain West? And so those are all, I saw a clip on social media. I think you and Matt Zimmer were talking, and Zim's comment was something like, well, SDSU could be FBS next year at this time. McFeely never saw it coming in Fargo, and all of that is, it's true that they could be FBS next year at this time. It's true to a certain extent that I was surprised, certainly when it happened. I didn't expect the timing of it, but it didn't just drop out of the sky. I mean, again, I was writing about this for 6 years, and I knew from talking to everybody at North Dakota State that there was something going on. I mean, there was something happening. It wasn't like this, like the secret that nobody knew about or nobody talked about. There were coaches in other sports talking about it, off the record. All these guys have meetings. They all have staff meetings. The janitor is in meetings where they're like, so it wasn't a total secret. Yeah. It's just that the timing of it. And even a couple of months before this happened, if you'll recall, both Dom Izzo and I were on the air, and I wrote that there was something going on. Like we were hearing very specific rumors in December about dollar amounts and when this was all going to happen. I just couldn't nail it down journalistically. And I had a source, which I've been open about, flat out lied to me and said, nope, nothing happening. Like a week later it happened. So my point of all of this is it's sort of like the scene in Fletch. I was thinking about this the other day, the scene in Fletch, right? Where he's playing, Mr. Barbar, and he's seeing the doctor. And he says, boy, sure is a shame about Ed. Yeah, the end came really suddenly for Ed. And the doctor goes, he was sick for years. And then Barbar / Chevy Chase says, yeah, but I mean, it just, the end came really fast once it came. The doctor says, he was in intensive care for 8 weeks. And then Chevy Chase says, I mean, the end. I mean, like the very end when he died, that was really sudden. And I think that's the parallel. When I heard Matt say that, I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, the end came very suddenly, but there was 6 years of buildup to it, and at least a couple of months of really strong things happening that we knew were happening. We just couldn't nail them down. And so I don't know how close South Dakota State is. We don't know if they want to go, right? I mean, has anybody at South Dakota State said publicly or privately, yes, we want to go?
Yeah,
I don't know. And again, maybe they have. Maybe they have to Matt. I don't know. Maybe they have to you. I don't know. But publicly, like, they're not even giving any indications they want to move up.
I'll paraphrase the multiple conversations I've had with Justin Sell on this topic over the last year and a half. And the answer, paraphrasing in general, is they always are going to cover their ground immediately and respect where they are, where their feet are, and competing for national championships. But, if a call came, we'd like to be ready, and they're not lunging at anything, but they want to have their ducks in a row. Dan Jackson just said, again, competitively, which I agree with you, is a smaller part of the equation than most people understand. It's much more about financially that, Mountain West Conference teams have been avoiding scheduling the Jacks and the Bison for several years now. So they feel confident they could compete the way NDSU does, and we're going to get to that. But yeah, I mean, there's been of course, yes, we're trying really hard. That is what we got to do.
Well, I don't know that's the way it needs to be phrased. I mean, right. So again, yes. I mean, the question is, and I don't mean to tell anybody what to do or how to do their job, but the obvious question is, okay, so you say you're ready to go if the phone call came, or you're getting your ducks in a row. So what specifically?
We want to be ready. Yes.
What specifically are you doing? Because NDSU hired a consultant.
Yeah.
They had a feasibility study done. To the best of my knowledge, and again, Justin Sell, you have my cell phone number or somebody has it. I don't believe that South Dakota State has had a feasibility study done, a full one, where they take a full accounting of the athletic department and say, here are your benchmarks for the next 6 years. Again, if I am wrong, I will own up to it. I just have heard otherwise. I could be wrong. But so that those are the questions. Like, it's not, are you ready to go? Because what are they going to say? Oh no, God, no.
I agree.
We're 150 miles from being ready to go. We're not even close. Mm-hmm. And so that's I think the want to part of it is that to me is the question. NDSU wanted to do this, specifically wanted to go to the FBS, and actually more specifically to the Mountain West. I don't know if SDSU has that want to. Maybe they do. I don't know.
It takes a lot of money, and the bigger piles that you can get from the biggest donors would help. I think Dana J. Dykehouse always plays a part in all this. He certainly did in the transition to Division I. So did Denny Sanford. You have to have the money. He's been pretty aggressive. He put the names on the stadium. We'll see. What was Matt Larson saying back when people were asking him about this?
Yeah, he was saying, we are doing a
feasibility study. We are doing a feasibility study. We do have a consultant.
No, he did not let us in on that. He did not let me in on that. I learned about that after they made the move. But again, it's not just him, although I did talk to him privately as well. And he was saying, I can't say that we're going to go, but we're certainly going to take a hard look at, and if it's a certain conference, if it's Conference USA that calls, which they did, I was being told behind the scenes that Conference USA was interested, and NDSU said, no, we're fine, because they wanted all sports. And I reported that months ago, that Conference USA, there was at least something there. And so there was interest in it, and NDSU let it be known in the college world. It's a very small world. NDSU let it be known, whether it was through themselves directly or through a third party or multiple third parties, because that way that's not subject to open records requests of nosy reporters and columnists.
Yes.
I mean, the leagues out there knew it. The leagues out there knew what NDSU wanted to do. And I think everybody agrees that if it wasn't for geography, North Dakota State would have been gone. Geography and maybe some other, the SEC getting all pissy about FCS schools coming into the FBS, that NDSU probably would have been gone a couple of years earlier than what they were. So that's my point is it's fully possible that South Dakota State gets a phone call in 6 months and Justin Sell says, yep, we're going, and they're ready to go. And they've done all this stuff behind the scenes. and just nobody knows about it. But it just seems unlikely to me that like nobody knows about any of this stuff if something is happening or something. I mean, NDSU was mentioned multiple times in other, in this realm, right? I mean, they were in the discussion for an invitation in 2024 when it ended up being Northern Illinois and UTEP.
That's right. I remember.
They didn't want, right? I mean, so that was 2 years ago that they were in the mix. They're in the conversation. So it didn't just completely drop out of left field. There was some smoke before there was fire.
Sure. Well, you had the commissioner of the Mountain West Conference up at the podium and taking questions at this media day last week. And correct me if I'm wrong, words she used about the possible expansion from 10 teams to more, always knowing that somebody could leave, although it appears, and you've written about this, UNLV doesn't appear to be going anywhere. I
don't think she didn't bring up the idea of somebody leaving.
No, she did not. Forgive me. But she said at 10 teams.
I asked the question, you're referring to my question in the press conference, which was everybody always wants to talk about expansion. Where's the Mountain West in terms of expansion? Because you've mentioned the number 12 in prior interviews because they're at 10 schools right now. And her answer was, to paraphrase, 12 is a good number because that's where we've been in the past. And so we're always kind of looking at that number. That doesn't mean we're actively seeking anybody, but if there are schools out there that would be good fits and the opportunity presents itself, we would be open to expanding to 10, 11, or 12. Yep. I followed up with her later in a one-on-one interview after her press conference thing, and she said 12 has always been a historic number for us. That's where we've been. So I think somewhere between 10 and 12 is a good spot for us to be.
Right.
I asked her specifically about adding FCS schools because she had mentioned during her presser that it's going to be really hard for FBS schools to move around because all of the media rights contracts are locked in through, I think, mostly 31 and 32. And so with the grant of rights, which means that these schools are locked into their conferences because they will not get TV money if they leave, plus they'll have to pay a huge penalty to leave. I asked her, so since this FBS movement is so difficult, would you look at, FCS schools? And she said, it used to be a lot more difficult. She said, you remember the story about NDSU? Now those hurdles have been removed or whatever she said. It was, paraphrasing again, but she didn't say, no, we're not taking FCS schools. So, I mean, I think you can, I think between now and 2031 or 2032, whatever it is, if things stay the way they are, I think she's right that it's going to be really hard for an FBS school to move. And I don't know what the financial incentive would be to move, from one conference to another now because all the TV deals are locked in. Then the area of expansion would be potentially FCS. I find it interesting, however, that she keeps mentioning 12, and there are 2 schools that perfectly fit the Mountain West footprint that I think if they're not already, I've heard that they're more aggressive and they're getting ready behind the scenes, Montana State and Montana, that would perfectly fit the Mountain West Conference in every way, shape, and form. Yeah,
that'd make a lot of sense. They got 25,000 seat stadiums. They're constantly filling, and they feel Mountain West. They got mountains in the backdrop of their stadiums, for goodness sakes.
Yes, there are no mountains in Fargo. Last time I checked,
yeah,
except in the middle of the winter time where there's a huge snow pile that they call Mount Fargo, but I don't think that counts.
Yeah. What did you glean from other teams in the league, other media in the league, as far as hey, North Dakota State is here? The amount of respect or the amount of maybe poo-pooing, either way.
Yeah, I mean, I think I tweeted this out. That I think there's a general and genuine sense of enthusiasm that North Dakota State has joined the league. I think there's respect there in terms of what they've accomplished in the past, but also sort of an undercurrent of, well, yeah, but it's FCS. And I think some of that is warranted. I've written about it myself, that there's no Murray States, Dan Jackson can say what he wants about the Mountain West, but NDSU's now playing Murray State, Indiana State, Northern Iowa, New Haven, and Stetson this year. I know that. And so it's just a different schedule. And Jason Eck, the former SDSU assistant, said this to me when I was talking to him about it, is that exact same thing. He said, he goes, the top teams in the Missouri Valley Football Conference, the SDSUs, the NDSUs, they're just fine in the Mountain West. They would be just fine. He said the difference is that on a week-to-week basis, you're not getting Murray State baked into your schedule every year, where you can take, rest 6 starters because they have a hangnail and still win the game by 6 touchdowns. You're not getting Indiana State baked into your schedule. And X said that, and I think he's right. And I've written that myself, that it's just a different. He said the consistency. He said just the consistency from week to week. It's just going to be a higher level of football against teams that are going to have 85 to 90 equivalency scholarship players is different than playing the bottom of the FCS, whether it's in non-conference or whether it's in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. NDSU's got one of those games this year. Fordham is going to be ugly, but their openers, Jacksonville State, it's pretty good. It's better than Incarnate Word, which they're going to play before. So we'll see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, that is an FBS team. Having said that, you look at the Mountain West, most people know that Massey rankings, it's one of many ranking systems now, but computers, stats, NDSU is ranked ahead not only of all the teams in the league right now, but I believe the teams in the league that departed last year. People love to look at that, and I think there's plenty of depth to that. And yet, some of the stronger teams, obviously, from this league in the past, Boise State, San Diego State, Colorado State, which was not very good the last couple of years.
Colorado State's been terrible.
Yeah. Fresno State, they're gone. They're in the Pac-12. So it is an easier league to, A, win games, and B, win in than it literally would have been last year.
A year ago, absolutely.
Years.
Yep.
No preseason poll. Brett McMurphy has said, last I knew, he's the one really famous guy, college writer, veteran, that said to NDSU should win the league, win all their games. You've said not so fast, my friend. No preseason poll. What's your sense of how North Dakota State will fare?
Well, but that's where I'm going back and forth. Is I did a little 67 move there. I had a gentleman from BetMGM on my podcast last week by the name of Chase Kitty, who's a James Madison guy that I knew from the past, but he works for BetMGM now. BetMGM set NDSU's win total at 9.5 over under, which means that to win on the over, NDSU would have to go 10-2, which seems like a lot. BetMGM also picked North Dakota State as the conference co-favorite along with UNLV to win the Mountain West Conference. So when I see those guys, when I see the Sharps picking NDSU to have 9 wins or 9.5 wins as the over-under number, I kind of go, I don't. What am I missing here? But at the same time, I just think you look at that NDSU's transition has only been a number of months now. They're still basically at the 63 scholarship, quote unquote, limit of FCS.
I've always thought that's an undervalued aspect.
Combine that with their schedule, which they have to go on the road for the 4 toughest games in the league, including Hawaii, which everybody has told me is an absolute death march to bring a football team to Hawaii. And NDSU's making that trip for the first time. Yeah. Combine that with, again, going back to the fewer players, the depth part of it, which is if you do have a league where you can't rest a bunch of guys because you're playing Murray State or Indiana State, is that going to catch up with you at some point? If you combine the travel, the tougher schedule, the lack of depth, when we get into late October, November, what does NDSU's team look like? I mean, we think they're already going to have a tough time at the skill positions in terms of Tim Polsak's been bringing in about 4 transfers so far at wide receiver, which if you just look at it and go, he must not think he has much on the roster at receiver if you're bringing in 4 kids in the summertime. They'll be fine, I think, to start with on the offensive line. But what if they lose their left tackle? What does that look like then? Do they have enough depth along the lines of scrimmage that they can hang in there? If they lose their really good tight end, Reese Kessel, then who's playing tight end? I don't know if they have a lot of kids after him. And so that's the part where you just kind of go, if they start to have a couple injuries, it's just the depth of FBS. Even if UTEP or Nevada or Wyoming are being picked toward the bottom of the league, are they still in better shape than, not to keep picking on Murray State because Murray, Kentucky was a fine place, but are they going to be a much more difficult opponent than Murray State, even though they might go 4-8 this year? Nevada, I still think they're going to be a better team than Murray State or Indiana State.
Well, you bring up a heck of a point, because I was getting to style of play as well, where over the years it seemed like NDSU's winning record against FBS teams over the last, 15 years, somewhat to do with a punishing physical style of play. There's a sense that that's going to work in a league that mostly or overall is more of a passing league. These are very general, vague terms.
Yes.
But the Mo Valley was a very overall classified as a physical league and more physical, and NDSU is consistently the best at that. And that played to their advantage. They could just wear teams, even FBS teams, usually mediocre to poor FBS teams, but there was an Iowa in there, down at the line of scrimmage and just control the ball, control the game. But that's tougher to do, obviously, in a deeper league. You can do that for one game, but for a bunch of games against non-Power 4 teams, might be more difficult, especially later in the season.
I think that everybody recognizes that when North Dakota State beat Iowa State, when they beat Iowa, when they beat Kansas State, they had 6 months to prepare for that one game.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, those were some NDSU teams that were all-timers, right? I mean, and that plays into this too, is I don't know how good this NDSU team is going to be, whether they're going to be an FCS or FBS. There's some questions that they haven't had in the past. They were stung by the portal in a couple spots where they hadn't been stung in the portal before. And so play all that together. And again, it's just a different animal. People around the Missouri Valley and in the Dakotas, whether it's at USD or SDSU or UND, they can play down the Mountain West thing all they want. It's a different animal. I used the word with you before when the NDSU first made this move about copium, that there's a lot of copium being distributed in the Dakotas about this move. You can't look at Stetson, Eastern Illinois, Murray State, New Haven, Indiana State, Northern Iowa, and say, yeah, that's exactly the same as playing in the Mountain West and playing 11 FBS games. Sorry, can't do it.
Do you hear from, and by the way, I agreed with you then and I agree with you now. I'm curious, it's fun. Guys like Matt Zimmer and I hear now from more NDSU trolls. I wouldn't call them fans, just the ones that are just having fun in a derogatory way with us, the South Dakota media, than we ever did. Are you hearing more or less from Jackrabbit and South Dakota fans?
I don't hear anything.
Of course, I'm just meaning Twitter references in general.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard anything on Twitter or anything else. So not a thing. My guess, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, is that there's going to be a lot more eyeballs on NDSU to see how they do than there's going to be in other directions to see how they do. To see how SDSU, UND, USD, I think North Dakota State is just going to be the team that people are keeping an eye on this year, whether they're Brookings or Sioux Falls or Grand Forks, in part hoping that they fall flat on their face and go 3-9. And the other part, I think, part of it is like, boy, it'd be kind of fun to be there as well. And so whatever. I'll say this, is that being around NDSU players at spring ball and at media days, coaches, administrators, the same places. North Dakota State is looking ahead. They're just not. I haven't heard anybody say, "Oh boy, sure we should play South Dakota State again." I've heard one person say that, and he quickly amended it and said, "But now I understand where we're going, and I understand this whole thing." And so it was like Cordell Volson, I think, came out and said, "You know what? When I first heard about it, I was kind of sad because I really loved playing for the Dakota Market Trophy. But then once I thought about it, it's like, well, this is pretty exciting where NDSU is going right now." So I just don't hear a lot of lament from coaches, administrators, players. They're all looking ahead.
Well, I even have some, I haven't really heard from Yotes fans, Jacks fans who are a little perturbed that we are giving any oxygen to NDSU. And it's kind of like, I think there's more people that are curious and watching about this maiden voyage then we'll admit it, and we'll at least be checking scores and watching some of the games, especially late at night. And then there's the Jason Eck factor as well. You wrote a column about him, and he'll revive whatever rivalry kind of you've mentioned poking the bear with NDSU, and they play each other, and there's natural curiosity there. And just another cleanup item, a couple cleanup items, and I'll just let you address this all at once or whatever you want. Is there going to be a rival now that there is no SDSU for the time being? Is it Wyoming? That appears to be the front runner. And then everybody who dogs the Mountain West Conference and going FBS as opposed to competing for national championships mentions, the Idaho Bowl or whatever random bowl. The 4 bowl tie-ins, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 of them are in Hawaii, Arizona, Tempe, and Tucson. 2 in Arizona, 1 in Hawaii, and the other, the league champion, is going to a bowl to be announced and basically picked by ESPN, which might not be in as great of a place to go as Arizona or Hawaii. But
that's an open-ended. They can go anywhere. I mean, ESPN could decide to send them to a really good bowl. Yeah. If NDSU fans want to buy the tickets and go. So I wouldn't downplay that as being some sort of negative. Look, I mean, we've been through this 100 times before. I mean, NDSU fans, NDSU coaches, NDSU administrators, NDSU players for years were saying there's got to be something more than this. There's got to be something more than playing St. Thomas on a Saturday and winning 67-3. Okay, sorry. I mean, it's great to win 11 games, but at what point does it get old? And it clearly got old in Fargo, and people stopped showing up for the games and having the passion like they once did. And maybe that's not the case in Brookings. Maybe that's not the case in Vermilion. Maybe it's not the case in Grand Forks. Then don't worry about it then. Then don't watch NDSU. Don't pay any attention to them. Just who cares then? I mean, if what are people complaining about in Brookings or Sioux Falls? Like, I mean, why do you care? If you're happy playing for national championships, if they're happy, going 11-1 or 9-3, worst floor, then life is good for you then, because you're going to be competing for national championships, and NDSU is going to be playing in the Arizona Bowl or whatever. People here are ready for the Arizona Bowl or a chance eventually, perhaps, at a college football playoff berth. They've been to 11 FCS championships in 15 years. They won 10 of them. They're sick of beating St. Thomas 67-3. They're sick of beating Stetson, literally the worst team in Division I football last year. They're sick of beating a team like that by whatever they want to beat them by. If Dan Jackson and Justin Sell and 10,000 SDSU fans think that's more fun than playing Jacksonville State on a Saturday night at the Dome and have a chance to play in the Snoop Dogg Bowl, then God bless you and have fun in FCS. That's fine. I wrote a column not long ago that said I'm not going to sit there and take shots at FCS because it was really good to NDSU. It was really, really good to NDSU. But they got tired of it. I got tired of it, obviously. I mean, the last 6 years, if you can't pick up on my vibe about how bored I was with the whole thing, then you're not paying attention. And it was the same way among the fans. And I've had 3 NDSU head coaches now tell me that the players, one of the reasons that some of the kids, not all of them, were transferring from NDSU to go elsewhere was because the players wanted better competition. The Trent Fraleys of the world, the Adam Cofields of the world, they just said, you know what? I'm sick of beating teams 55-10 every week. A couple of games mixed in there like the Jacks and more recently UND up in Grand Forks have been very competitive. Certainly the title games were always competitive. But when you're playing 12 games and 10 of them suck, if you're a real competitor, you want to go someplace else and compete against better competition. And I've heard from 3 NDSU head coaches that was a factor in some, not all of the transfers. Obviously, this was a factor in many of them. But the other factor was we just want to play better competition. So NDSU is going to do that. If South Dakota State fans are happy where they're at, good. Go win a national championship, knock yourself out, then everybody's happy.
Enjoy it, Mike. Love to hear from you at some point deep into the season about how it's all going.
Yep. When they're 3-8 and they're about ready to run Powell second, that's not going to happen. That's not going to. They'll be fine. They'll, you know what? I've said this before. I've said this on Dom's show. The fun part about this is we don't know what they're going to do, right? I mean, last year I could look at the schedule and go, win, 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 win. This year it's like the first game against Jacksonville. Jacksonville State's good. They've won 9 games the last 3 years in Conference USA. I mean, they're a legit FBS program. Look, the Bison are only favored by a touchdown in their first FBS game. Isn't that interesting? Gosh, it might be a competitive game. Yeah. What if they lose? Oh my God. Everything's gonna be just fine.
It's gonna be fun. Mike McFeely, the Forum of Fargo-Moorhead. You know where to find him. That's it for Happy Hour today. For video producer Cordell Wright, I'm John. Happy hour and cheers.
You need anything else, John?
No, I think I'm good, Greg. I think I'm going to tap out.
All right. Have a good night.